Aquaman Andromeda issue 2, Ram V writing with Christian Ward on the art. We were very high on the first issue of this. Liked it quite a bit. Had the interesting nitpick that the Aquaman stuff is probably the worst part of that first issue. I'm happy to say that wasn't an issue here in this one, because when he does show up here, it is in direct correlation of what's going on. He shows up in the action, if you will.
Yeah, and it is very much a less is more, right?
Yeah.
We're still getting Black Manta. I almost said Black Adam, but Black Manta and Arthur, but they're treated as such big deals, right? It's almost as if they're just appearing in this other story about you know,
we're following the regular people, and then they're coming in occasionally and being these kind of larger than life characters. So it sets up this flashback early on of the captain, Phil, and how he was given this assignment to sort of run this ship that might never even have to do anything, but it was on retainer, and the other guy was like, oh, I got the big proper promotion, this must suck for you, and he ends up punching him, and he's got this temper, and it shows that he feels sort of held back by the Navy or whatever. So it kind of gives you a bit of his motivation and characterization and why he's going to be determined to keep going, even when he's told that it's dangerous or told that he shouldn't later on. And then eventually, of course, he's death, but we'll get to that when we get there. So they've got these fancy suits. There was a few. Obviously, I probably dropped the Abyss a couple of times in the first issue, but there was a couple of things in this issue that really stuck out to me about the comparison. One is that they've got this fancy suit that just repurposes the H2O into hydrogen for power and oxygen for obviously for them, but they're not breathing it in as air, right? It's going straight into their lungs and just and if you've ever seen the Abyss, in that they develop a thing where they sort of breathe liquid oxygen so they can go deeper into the water, and it was making me think of that a little bit. It's like, oh, it's a different thing, you know?
Yeah, that's the one thing I remember from the Abyss. Is the scene where the dude freaks out because he's in the liquid oxygen, and they're telling him to just breathe like normal.
Because they say here it feels like drowning. I mean, I have to question, surely liquid being in your lungs would still be a problem, even if it is technically.
Yeah, but I remember the rationalization when I read stuff about the Abyss was when you're even in a pressurized environment like that, the pressure is so great that your lungs won't actually work to breathe in the air. So they need that liquid to push back. It's still process them. I don't know if that's real science or if that was just, made up for the movie.
It's good enough for a movie, although
it's good enough for here too, because I buy it uses the hydrogen for heat because they're at such depths that it's cold. And for the pressure, and you're just like, oh, okay, yeah. So this is so Christian Ward doesn't have to draw scuba tanks and stuff and be all encumbered. So yeah, it works.
Yeah. So this is effectively the most of this issue is them going towards the mysterious ship that fell out the sky and try to make their way in. So it's every sci-fi horror story or movie you've seen where there's a slow entrance, going in, there's no life forms here, so let's look for anything we can sort of understand. Can we find the engine room? And of course there's a big massive central chamber with an orb that might be powering the whole ship and whatever else.
Learn from enough movies. Don't go near that orb. Orb's bad news.
Oh yeah. So eventually there's a bit of a ruckus, something it tips over and some of it's falling down, and that's when Aquaman shows up and saves our main character Yvette from the falling debris. And that's also around the same time that we see Manta's watching them and saying, okay, we're going to try and infiltrate that ship, and that's what he goes off to do. So yeah, it's all, and obviously they're constantly talking to the people back, but so Yvette's with a guy that gets hurt in in this debris, and when she's talking on the comms, Aquaman, sort of indicates not to mention him, don't tell anyone about that I'm here. Yeah. And sure enough, she's like, hey, you're the king of the seas, right? You're the thing my dad told me about as a kid, the stories of someone on the water. And yeah, but he's basically, tell your captain that you need to leave, that no one should be here. This is an alien ship, and it did fall from the sky, but not in the way you think it did. It was built in Atlantis. And it's
that was the mind blow for me. I was like, whoa. So is this some kind of Atlantean weapon that they shot?
Well, I'm thinking prison. I'm thinking there's something.
Yeah.
Well,
once we got to more than as he's saying this, I'm like, whoa, so was this like a weapon that they were going to use on the surface world, and then they sank it, and no one's supposed to go near it, and then as the story got going, it felt like it was more like a prison.
Yeah. And when they're seeing the orb and stuff, when the captain and the other dude that's with him goes towards the orb, they're seeing like faces in the orb, and then you get the reveal as it goes on that this thing is manifesting things from their mind, and that's actually why there was a Kraken last issue. It's not because there was a Kraken down here; it's because that dude was reading a book about a Kraken.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever seen Sphere.
I have. Yes, I did it on Ace.
When that started to happen, I was getting the vibe of Sphere when they open up the drawer and there's nothing but 20,000 Leagues books because it's manifesting fears. And I was just like, oh man, okay. I know what MV's doing. So...
Yeah. Or maybe a comparison more people might get is the State Puff Marshmallow Man.
That too.
Ray thought of State Puff Marshmallow Man, and that's why he popped up. So there you go.
Yeah.
So... Yeah, Black Manta comes on and like threatens one of the dudes. He's like, "Here's like a USB stick. I'm going to call upon you for something, and if you don't do it, like I can get back out of this ship. I've got cloaking tech. I'm like the goddamn Predator."
Yeah, so that's what got me. So when he enters, I didn't realize what was going on, and I thought something from the ship got into their ship, and then I realized after staring at the panel for a couple seconds, oh no, that's a footsteps. That's cloaked Manta. So I thought that was Christian Ward doing that, where it took me a second. That was a pretty cool touch.
Yeah. So there's a lot of glorious stuff. There's like the flashback for the other guy and like his grandfather like dunking his head in the water, and then it sort of cuts to him being eviscerated by the light of the orb. Everything's shaking, and that's when Black Manta like talks to the guy on the ship, the guy with the beard, and basically threatens him and is like, yeah, I'm going to be calling upon you at some point and you're going to do what I say. So, really interesting stuff. Obviously, Yvette's can try to convince the captain that no, you can't stay here, you have to leave. Yeah. And then later, Arthur calls it a prison. He says I am right inside that prison. Right inside that prison is the Bane of Atlantis, and I'm like, Atlantis has a Bane.
But instead of talking like Tom Hardy's Bane, it's actually clear, but you have to be underwater to hear it.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So yeah, that's just when it's revealing all this stuff, and it's kind of like cutting around the different things, and you realize that's why the Kraken existed. And the captain's getting really tetchy. Doesn't want to leave. And he's getting really paranoid that the others like want him to fail, and that sort of ties into his backstory. And he ends up hitting one of the crew members, slapping her across the face. And it's this really dark moment. It feels quite
yeah.
And you can actually see what looks like in the orb, the prison orb, if you want to call it that. It looks like whoever's in there is smiling when he's making. Yeah. It's like he's feeding off the rage and the anger and the fear. So it's right before he slaps her. You can see this like purple figure smiling inside the orb, and I have to assume that that's like a hint of who this is, and that it maybe is someone we're going to like recognize or understand. But as he's strangling another crew member, because someone tries to step in after he hits the other one, and the captain's strangling this other guy. You sort of see him react, and then you realize someone stabbed him in the top of the head with a knife. And that's the last page. That's the cliffhanger.
Yeah, that was pretty. I wasn't expecting the head stab in this.
No, it was pretty violent, and so it's the older crewman is the one who did it, and everyone's shocked, and that's the end of book 2.
Yeah, and he was the one that was paired with Yvette the whole time, right? The older crewman. Yeah, and so it seems like he's protective over her. Also, there was a part where the guy that's looking at the orb, it goes to a flashback of him talking to his grandpa.
Yeah, that's the one that ends with his grandpa dunking his head in the water before.
Yeah, and then that orb discharges and fries him.
Oh yeah, obliterates him.
Yeah, and that their whole conversation is about belief, and his dad said that believing in God's is stupid and stuff, and that's where Grandpa teaches him a lesson by drowning him, and that's his undoing. That's the last thing he thinks about before, and so I thought that was pretty interesting in the scheme of what we know how Ramby likes to write about ideas and stuff like so like what if this isn't just a prison with one person in it, but it's a prison of put all of the bad beliefs of Atlantis or whatever. That's what this thing represents. Or because it's pretty weird to see how that is. I don't know how that story fits in with the rest of this, with what we saw. So I just got my brain going.
Sure, yeah. Obviously the art's gorgeous.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff with the ships, the moodiness of them swimming towards the mysterious ship and all the rest of it. I guess if there's anything, I think this issue is probably better than issue 1, but the only thing I would say that is technically slightly lesser than issue 1 is probably there's not as many big spectacle moments in there, because issue 1 had the big Kraken moment and Arthur showing up, and it had stuff like that. This issue doesn't necessarily have that, which is maybe the one thing that makes you feel...
No, but it progresses the story for, without having those big moments.
Yeah,
right?
the story's fantastic. And,
yeah.
It didn't have those 1 or 2 weaker moments with Arthur where he's with the village or whatever. Everything with Arthur felt good. Everything with Black Manta felt good. And even the moment where, like, someone in Manta's ship says, hey, Curry's here. And like you sort of get the reaction moment from Black Manta. Like, it's like, oh, okay, so this is a functioning Aquaman and Black Manta who know each other. This isn't, because we're in like an Elseworld effectively. We're still sort of learning the rules and what they're doing. But yeah, our main character Yvette does swim back to the ship, so she's on her way back to the mysterious ship at the end. So she's not there to witness the whole murder thing, which is what ends the issue. So. No, it's interesting. She goes back out to talk to Arthur basically and ask why, what's going on. So, what are you giving Andromeda issue 2?
I'm giving the 8.5.
I'm just straight 9, I think.
Yeah.
Straight 9 from me.